Hello everyone, I'm Jack Silva-Ponte. In this video you're going to learn about plagiarism and how to avoid it. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is taking ideas from a source and making it look like it's your own work. So why is plagiarism bad? It's bad because you're not giving credit to the source that you're using. It's like when someone tries to steal your car. How would you feel if someone stole your car? You'd be mad, right? Well, that's exactly what authors must feel when someone takes their ideas and not give them credit. Just like that guy. Now you might be thinking, what can happen if you plagiarize someone else's work? Well, the consequences are not that good. If you're in high school or you're in college, you can get a bad grade for plagiarism. Yep, that's exactly why you got an F there, buddy, because you copied everything straight off the internet. Another bad consequence that can happen is that you can get expelled from school. So what are some examples of plagiarism? Well, one clear and obvious example of plagiarism is copying information from a source and pasting it into a research paper that you will use for class. Another clear and obvious example would be writing every piece of information from a source to your own paper, word for word. You should definitely avoid doing any of these acts of plagiarism. But of course, there are more examples of plagiarism other than just copying and pasting. Most of the times people plagiarize without even realizing it. For example, in Jessica Mitford's Kind and Unusual Punishment, she wrote, "The character and mentality of the keepers may be of more importance in understanding prisons than the character and mentality of the kept." Using this information, a student wrote, "But the character of prison officials, the keepers, is of more importance in understanding prisons than the character of prisoners, the kept." This is considered plagiarism because the student did not put the sentence in his or her own words. The words and phrases that are being underlined shows just how much the person failed to paraphrase the sentence. Instead of writing what that student wrote, you can write, "We may understand prisons better if we focus on the personalities and attitudes of the prison workers rather than those of the inmates." As you can see, a lot of the words and phrases that are being used in this sentence are not the same as the original one. But it's still not your idea, and if you write the sentence without giving your source credit, it's still considered plagiarism. When you're taking an idea from a source, you should always give them credit in order to avoid plagiarism. In this case, you can cite the source that you're using by putting the author's last name in parentheses, and that has to go before the period at the end of the sentence. If you're using a book, you should put the page number right next to the author's last name in the parentheses, just like the example being shown. And if you notice, I have my own citations right next to the examples that are being shown. This is where I got these examples, and I'm giving my source credit in order to avoid plagiarism. But before you cite a source, you have to introduce it to the audience. For example, you can write, according to Jessica Mitford, a critic of the penal system, "We may understand prisons better if we focus on the personalities and attitudes of the prison workers rather than those of the inmates." Notice the according to in a sentence? You might want to use that when citing a source. It's a good way to give them credit. Of course, paraphrasing can be very hard and it might take a lot of work to get it right. But it's a lot better than getting an F, like that guy who just copied straight off the internet. But if you have to copy more than 2 words, you can use quotation marks in order to avoid plagiarism. Don't start a sentence with quotation marks though. And if you're going to use quotations, you should still cite your source in order to give credit. Of course, you shouldn't quote a lot of words. Most teachers won't want that. And you shouldn't misquote the author either. Some people might take offense by not being quoted correctly. If you're going to quote someone, make sure you do it right in order to avoid any trouble. And if you're using your own work, you still have to cite it. Not citing yourself is also considered plagiarism. Self-plagiarism, to be specific. And you definitely want to avoid that. Another way you can avoid plagiarism is by having a works cited page based on what your instructor assigns you. This is a good way to keep track of all of your sources. Another good way to keep track of your sources is taking notes and compare them to the original source. Once you got all your research done, make sure your work doesn't look too much like your sources. A plagiarism checker can also help, so you might want to use that. Here's what a works cited page should look like, and these are the sources that I used for this video. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope it helped you a lot. And please, don't be like that guy who copies everything straight off the internet. Thank you.